It took me a couple of years after going to Kenya, having some other experiences, and to kind of decide or to understand that there was a place to work at this intersection of art and activism. The project that I had come up with to directly address that experience I had in Kenya was called the Cradle Project. And that was a call to artists all over the world to create a representation of an empty cradle that would represent the lost potential of our orphan children. At that time in 2006, when it was launched, there were 48 million children orphaned in sub-Saharan Africa alone. And so it was a way to think about wrapping your head around what that actually means and inviting people to participate, and in that participation really process, what it means to have that many empty cradles. One of the things that we didn't know going into it was this understanding of how much that experience and that participation really opened people up and engaged them in that issue. I did imagine those, the million bones on the National Mall while I was doing the Cradle Project, so I had that idea in my mind. There's a book, it's called We Wish to Inform You That Tomorrow We Will Be Killed with Our Families. It's written by Philip Gorovich. It's about the Rwandan genocide that happened in 1994, where over 800,000 people were killed in 90 days in a country the size of Rhode Island. Everything about that genocide is inconceivable, really, to understand. If those bones of the people who had been murdered in Rwanda were piled in the streets of DC, would we have been brave enough to call it a genocide? Would we have been brave enough to act? And I pictured that visual. We're so fortunate to not see mass graves in our country, for ongoing conflicts. But these mass graves are being filled in countries, around the world. And we did make a promise through the Geneva Convention. Actually, we signed an international law that we would be responsible to take action if genocide were to happen again. And it has happened again, and we've failed on that law. Yeah, the symbol of the bone certainly is used to attest to the gravity of the issue. But more significantly, it's meant to remind us that we belong to each other, to move forward with this understanding and this respect that if we belong to each other, then we're responsible to one another. And what does that responsibility mean? The image of a million bones, that installation came to me as an image first, but the participatory factor of, it's a social arts practice is what it's called. Mm-hmm. And it's the experience that a participant goes through that also is a part of the art. And for every bone that was on the mall, there was a story behind it. It was about over 3 years of work leading up to that. Every conversation, every classroom that we went in, and conversation that was had in that classroom, in these communities, with artists, with activists, with whomever, with our elected officials, that really was what that work was about. That's such an open question. It's such an interesting question because I don't think the role has to be any more or less than what an individual who considers themselves an artist wants to produce with their art. I am interested in this intersection, and the art world wouldn't consider what we do art. We know it is art, and so we'll move forward, and we'll always consider the projects that we do and these installations, or whatever the form comes out as art. But it's a hard question, so I leave it to others to decide what they want to think on that space.